The father discovered needle marks on his son's arm every day, and the truth brought him to his knees.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Chicago, winter damp and cold, as if the very sky shared the heavy breaths of laborers beneath the dim yellow lights of the suburbs. In an old apartment building, where rust stained the balconies and wooden doors creaked with every gust of wind, a man named Andrew, 38 years old, worked as a city street cleaner. Gaunt and weathered by sun and wind, his eyes were always ringed with dark circles, not only from working double shifts but also from sleepless nights following the death of his wife Mary, who had passed from kidney failure just a year ago. Their only son, Lucas, now 15, was in 9th grade at the nearby public school. He had always been a good kid, decent student, few friends, always home on time, never one to cause trouble. But since his mother's death, something in Lucas had changed. He wasn't loud or rebellious like other teens, but his growing silence deeply unsettled Andrew. That morning, before sunlight could pierce the fog outside the window, Andrew stepped out of his room, careful not to wake his son. Breakfast was already prepared, 2 slices of jam-covered toast and a cup of warm milk. But Lucas hadn't come out yet. Andrew knocked on his son's door. "Lucas, time to get up. You're going to be late." No reply. Andrew slowly opened the door and found his son slumped over his desk, asleep, with the desk lamp still glowing. He walked over and gently placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Lucas, why are you sleeping here? Go to bed." Lucas startled awake, eyes red and exhausted. He mumbled, "I was studying late." "Is something going on? Why have you been avoiding me? You've stopped talking to me, skipped breakfast all week, and you keep falling asleep like this." Lucas said nothing, head bowed. Andrew looked at him, his heart heavy. He took a deep breath. "I'm not a mind reader, Lucas. If something's going on, talk to me. Don't make me worry." "I'm fine," Lucas replied softly, like he just wanted the conversation to end. "Son. I don't want to keep guessing what you're thinking or feeling. It's exhausting to watch you shut me out every day." The boy just lowered his head and walked into the bathroom without another word. The door clicked shut gently, but to Andrew, it felt like a slap in the face. He sighed and returned to the kitchen table. The milk had gone cold. The chair across from him was empty, as if to remind him that in this house now, he was the only one still trying to hold on to something that was slipping away bit by bit. At the waste station near the Englewood subway stop, Andrew worked the afternoon shift with Ethan, a close friend and longtime colleague. The two of them often cleaned the same traffic-heavy, dusty streets together. That day, as they pushed the garbage cart through a narrow alley, Ethan said, "You look exhausted. Trouble with the kid again?" Andrew shook his head. "He doesn't argue. He just stays silent. And that silence is worse than yelling." Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead and spoke with sympathy. "I get it. A teenage boy, no mother, he can turn into a stranger right in front of you. But you gotta be patient, Andrew. I'm trying. But it feels like I'm losing my son, and I don't know why." Ethan placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and nodded. "Just stay by his side. Even if he doesn't say a word, he still needs something to lean on. Don't let him think he's alone." That evening, when Andrew got home, he saw Lucas sitting on the sofa, clutching his backpack. He had just come home from class. Upon seeing his father, Lucas stood up quickly. "I'm going to study upstairs." "Wait," Andrew said. "Sit down for a minute. Let's talk." Lucas hesitated, then sat down with both hands on his knees, eyes averted from his father. "Do you miss your mom?" Andrew asked softly. "Yeah. I do too. Every night when I come home, I still hope to see her cooking, and you babbling about some random thing at school." "Things aren't like before," Lucas said, still not looking at him. "No, they're not. But we still have each other, don't we?" Lucas pressed his lips together and then stood up. I have to study. Andrew clenched his fists under the table, eyes following his son's figure disappearing up the stairs. There was something inside that boy he couldn't reach and that made him feel like he was slowly losing his place as a father. That night, Andrew sat on the balcony, smoking a cigarette for the first time in years. He hadn't touched one since Mary was diagnosed with kidney failure. But tonight, he needed something to stay grounded. Across the building, Mrs. Isabel, a nosy widowed neighbor, stepped out to water her plants. Lucas looks different these days. Dark circles, always walking like a ghost. Something wrong, Andrew? Family business, Andrew answered curtly. Well, people say where there's smoke, there's fire. These kids today, dangerous. You better keep an eye on him. You never know. I know my son. Good, Isabel replied as she turned back toward her apartment, but not before tossing in one last comment. A lot of parents think they know. Turns out they don't know a damn thing. Andrew stubbed out his cigarette, staring into the darkness between the buildings. The silence was so thick, he could hear the ticking clock in the living room. It was the only sound that reminded him time was still moving and he was still helpless. The next morning, Andrew woke to the sound of soft footsteps. Lucas was tiptoeing out of the house. It was only 5 a.m. Lucas? The boy jumped. I just wanted to go for a walk. Why not sleep a little more? I couldn't sleep. Are you hiding something from me? There's nothing. Then why do you keep avoiding me? Why don't you talk? Don't you trust me anymore? Lucas said nothing. He opened the door and stepped out, leaving Andrew alone in the freezing house. That evening, Andrew sat quietly at the dinner table. The seat across from him was still empty. A creeping emptiness wrapped around him. What he once thought was solid fatherly love, connection, trust was now cracking like a fractured pane of glass. He muttered to himself. What are you thinking, Lucas? What did I do wrong? Andrew couldn't remember exactly when that creeping suspicion began, only that it was one particularly quiet night, with wind whistling through the window like an invisible warning. Lucas had just finished showering. The water had stopped running, but the light in his room was still on. Andrew was getting ready to hang some clothes when he remembered he'd left a towel in his son's room. Lucas, he knocked gently. I'm almost done. Lucas's voice came from the bathroom. Without waiting, Andrew opened the door to retrieve the towel. But the moment he entered, his eyes landed on Lucas's backpack partially unzipped, one strap hanging askew. A flash of something darted through his mind. He glanced around, then walked over. He'd never had the habit of checking his son's belongings, but this time, his hand moved on its own and pulled the zipper down. Inside the backpack was a small, opaque plastic bag, nestled among a few schoolbooks. When he opened it, Andrew froze. Inside was a single-use syringe kit, a small unlabeled box, and several alcohol wipes. Everything was disturbingly neat, meticulously clean. His heart pounded. A burning sensation shot from his chest to his head. Andrew stood frozen for several seconds, then quickly packed everything back in, zipped the bag, and sat on the edge of the bed, feeling as if the floor beneath him had vanished. Just then, Lucas walked in. He was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, his hair still damp. Andrew looked up, about to say something, but his gaze fell on his son's elbow. There were small, dark, clustered bruises, not bug bites, but something else. They were evenly spaced, like marks from a needle. Andrew forced himself to stay calm. What happened to your arm? Lucas flinched and quickly pulled down his sleeve. Nothing. I bumped into the desk. What kind of bump leaves marks like that? Do you think I'm blind? I'm fine, really. Andrew said nothing else. He just stared at his son, eyes reflecting a storm of emotion he couldn't hide. Lucas turned away, walked to his desk, and sat down silently. That evening's dinner passed in silence, so quiet that even the sound of a spoon touching a plate rang in Andrew's mind like a hammer. Every time he glanced at his son, one haunting word spun like a cyclone in his head: addiction. A word he never imagined attaching to Lucas. After dinner, he sat down at his old computer and started searching through medical articles. He typed in keywords: signs of drug addiction, syringe marks, sleep deprivation, withdrawal. Each search result hit like a blade. Teen addicts who inject may have bruising at the elbow or upper arm. They often hide syringes, avoid family members. Skip breakfast, fall asleep randomly, mood swings. Andrew swallowed hard. Every description matched Lucas so perfectly, it sent chills down his spine. That night, just as Lucas was heading upstairs, Andrew stopped him. "Sit down." Lucas froze, avoiding eye contact. "What are you hiding from me?" "I told you, I'm fine." "What are those marks on your arm?" "I don't want to talk about this." Andrew slapped the table sharply, making the glass on it tremble. "You don't want to. You think you have the right not to. Do you know what I've been thinking? You planning to throw yourself into this mess like the rest of the world?" Lucas flinched and took a step back. "You think I'm a drug addict? Then tell me. What's that syringe in your backpack? What's that unmarked medicine box? You think I don't know how to use Google?" Lucas stood frozen, fists clenched. "I'm not addicted. I didn't do anything wrong." "Then explain it." I can't." That answer cut like a knife. Andrew collapsed into the chair, head in his hands. Lucas quietly backed into his room and closed the door without another word. The small house fell into a chilling, unbearable silence. The next morning, when Ethan came to pick Andrew up for work, he noticed his friend's dazed expression. "What happened?" "I think Lucas is using drugs." Ethan froze. "What?" "I found syringes in his backpack. His arm's bruised. He's falling asleep, avoiding me, hiding medication with no label. He won't talk to me." Ethan stayed quiet for a few seconds, then said, "It might not be what you think. Don't jump to conclusions, Andrew. I don't have the luxury of assuming anymore. I've already lost my wife. I can't lose my only son too." Ethan gently patted his shoulder, concern deep in his eyes. "If it's really that serious, you need to have a real conversation with him, or ask someone for help." That afternoon, when Andrew returned home, Lucas wasn't there. On his desk was an open notebook. Andrew stood in his son's room, observing every little detail: the spare coat hook, an empty glass, a dusty sketchbook, as if each object were begging to explain something no one could say out loud. Suddenly, a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Isabel again, holding a trash bag, but she lingered upon seeing him. "Your son's been acting really strange lately. I saw him sneaking around the pharmacy early one morning. Doesn't seem normal." Andrew frowned. "What pharmacy?" "That little one on Main Street. I saw him there myself on Monday." When she finally left, Andrew stood still, as if every fragment of his fear was forming into one grotesque shape. Later that night, when Lucas came home, Andrew was already waiting. He didn't say a word, just stared at his son, his eyes full of tension. Lucas passed him silently and headed upstairs. Not a word, not a glance. The distance between them had become a canyon. Andrew turned his face away, but couldn't stop the scream building inside. "Son, what is really going on?" After several days of unbearable tension, Andrew felt the house once a safe haven turning into a maze of doubt and torment. Lucas's silence was no longer peaceful, it was like thick glass, transparent but impenetrable, dividing them into two foreign worlds. Early in the morning, while Lucas was still asleep, Andrew quietly entered his son's room. Not out of distrust but because fear had overridden everything. He began rummaging through the drawers, opened the closet, searched every compartment. Under the bed, in an old shoebox, he found a small black pouch. Inside were 3 used syringes wrapped in toilet paper, and several small paper scraps with faint, blurry text, likely medication packaging. No drug names. No instructions. No branding. Just a bundle of things that made his heart pound like a war drum. Andrew's hands trembled as he held them, feeling like he was touching the crack in his own heart. He walked out, shut the door, and collapsed into a chair. His grip tightened around the evidence, lips pressed so tight they bled. That evening, as soon as Lucas walked in and hadn't even taken off his backpack, Andrew stopped him. "We need to talk." Lucas hesitated, but stayed still. Andrew walked up, placed the syringe pouch on the table. "What is this?" Lucas froze. His face turned pale. He didn't say a word, just stared at the items as if they were damning proof. "Do you even understand what this is? Do you know how many kids die because of those syringes?" Lucas's breathing grew heavy. I don't use them like you think." "Not like I think." "Then explain. Why are you hiding all this? You've been avoiding me for weeks, skipping meals, keeping secrets, and this is what I find." He got no reply. Andrew shouted, his voice hoarse from anguish. "You want to kill yourself like your mother did? She's only been gone a short time. Are you planning to leave me all alone too?" Lucas's eyes flared with anger for the first time. He shouted back. "Don't talk about Mom like that. You think I'm not hurting? You think I'm made of stone? You're all I have left of her, and now you're destroying even that. I'm not what you think. I didn't do anything wrong." Andrew couldn't take it anymore. In a moment of fury and heartbreak, his hand lifted and he slapped his son lightly on the cheek. The moment his hand touched Lucas's skin, Andrew snapped out of it. Both of them stood frozen. It wasn't a hard slap, but it shattered everything still holding them together. Lucas stared at his father, eyes red and unblinking, then stepped back. Without a word, he turned and ran upstairs, slamming the door behind him. The bang echoed like the sound of a heart breaking. That night, Andrew couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, eyes blank. From Lucas's room came muffled sobs, small as a kitten's whimper but sharp as Andrew's own silent cries. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. It was Ethan. "I saw your light still on. Is something wrong?" Andrew didn't say anything, he just opened the door and let him in. Seeing the wrecked look on his friend's face, Ethan sat down without asking more. After a few minutes, Andrew finally spoke. "I slapped Lucas." Ethan jolted. "You what?" He kept silent. Kept hiding things. "I found more syringes. Medicine wrappers. I couldn't take it anymore." Ethan sighed. "I get it. But hitting him, what does that solve?" "I didn't mean to. I'm overwhelmed. Exhausted. And scared. I'm terrified of losing him like I lost Mary." Ethan placed a hand on Andrew's shoulder. "Maybe he's hurting in a way you can't see. Don't assume every silence is a crime." The next morning, Andrew was on garbage duty in downtown Chicago, his mind foggy from lack of sleep. An old lady named Catherine, someone he often saw selling lottery tickets on the corner, called him over. "Mr. Andrew. I heard Mrs. Isabel say something about Lucas. Is everything all right?" Andrew didn't respond. Catherine shook her head. "I've known Lucas since he was little. He's not a bad kid. If he's silent, it's because he's hurting. You should talk to him like a father, not like a cop." That sentence stabbed straight into Andrew's heart. He gave a small nod and quietly pushed his garbage cart forward. At home, Andrew heard movement in Lucas's room. He walked up, about to knock, but froze. A small piece of paper had slipped out from under the door. Andrew bent down and picked it up. It was a hastily scribbled note written in blue ink. Dad doesn't trust me. I know that. But I don't know what else to do to make him believe me. Andrew clenched the paper in his hand and stood silently in the hallway. A dull ache pulsed in his chest, deep and steady. That evening, the neighbors gathered downstairs in the apartment courtyard again. Mrs. Isabel didn't miss the chance to speak up. I told you something's not right. Just yesterday, I saw him carrying a medicine box to the pharmacy. Which pharmacy? Someone asked. That little place on the corner, Johnson's Pharmacy. He was hiding that box like it was a secret. A middle-aged man named Frank, who never liked Andrew, jumped in. My daughter said she's seen Lucas buying syringes more than once. All those kids who get involved with needles, there's no coming back from that. Those whispers drifted into Andrew's ears as he happened to walk past the back courtyard. He stood still, fists clenched. These people knew nothing, yet they were ready to condemn a child based on gossip. Climbing the stairs, Andrew felt his insides boiling, not with anger at the neighbors, but at himself. Because he couldn't protect Lucas from their venom, and he couldn't protect Lucas from his own doubt. Late at night, Andrew sat alone in the living room, holding his phone. On screen was an unsent message to Lucas, just a few short lines. If you ever want to talk, I'm here to listen. But he didn't send it. His hand trembled. He deleted it. Typed it again. Deleted again. In the end, he simply whispered to himself. Lucas, where are you, really? 3 days passed. The small house remained frozen. Lucas didn't speak to Andrew, just quietly went to school, came back, ate very little, and stayed locked in his room. Andrew didn't try to start a conversation either. His guilt kept him silent, but the suspicion never faded. It hung there like a cold iron hook in his chest, painful and gnawing. And then, on Thursday morning, Andrew decided to take the day off. Partly from exhaustion, but mostly because he needed to know what his son was actually doing. He got up at 4 a.m., stood hidden behind the window curtain, heart pounding as he heard Lucas's door open. The boy stepped out quietly, backpack slung over his shoulder. Andrew quickly threw on a coat, pulled down his beanie, and slipped outside to follow, keeping his distance. Lucas walked across 3 blocks and stopped in front of a small bakery called Mary's Bakery, tucked into a corner of the neighborhood Andrew had barely noticed before. The clock read only 4:50 a.m. Lucas went inside. Through the fogged-up window, Andrew saw him put on an apron and join a middle-aged woman, likely the owner. They began baking bread, kneading dough, brushing egg wash onto rolls. The room glowed warmly inside, cozy in a way that felt strange. But Andrew's heart only felt more tangled. He's working. Andrew mumbled. 3 hours later, Lucas left the bakery, hoodie pulled up, and walked quickly across several blocks toward a main road. Andrew continued to tail him. The boy stopped in front of a small pharmacy with an old sign, Smith's Pharmacy. After glancing around, he went inside. Andrew waited, then approached, pretending to look through the glass display. Inside, he saw Lucas talking to a young pharmacist, petite, curly brown hair, white coat. She seemed familiar. Lucas pulled out a folded paper from his backpack and pointed to a small box behind the counter. The girl nodded, retrieved the box, one exactly like the one Andrew had seen before. Lucas paid with a handful of coins and a few crumpled bills. After receiving the medicine, he bowed his head, thanked her, and left, heading home. Andrew stood frozen. A cold chill ran down his spine. Why is he buying medicine here? Why hide it from me? Why take a morning job just to buy medicine? He turned away, heading toward the bus station. His head spun with theories. What is that medicine? If it's not drugs, then what is it? That afternoon, Andrew reported to the waste station as usual. Ethan was sipping coffee. Seeing his friend, he looked surprised. Thought you took the whole day off. I had to work. But this morning, I followed Lucas. Ethan straightened up. What did he do? He woke at 4:30, walked to a bakery, worked until 8. Then he stopped by a pharmacy, bought a medicine box, and came home. He's working that early? Yeah. Ethan scratched his head. Probably trying to earn his own money. Maybe saving up for something. Kids do that. Andrew shook his head. He's spending the money on medicine. And not regular medicine. No label. No prescription. He hides it like it's dangerous. Ethan went quiet. After a moment, he said. Maybe someone's forcing him. Like, drug running? Middleman? You think of that? I've thought of everything. It might be serious, Andrew. I know. Ethan looked at his friend with concern. So, what are you gonna do? Andrew didn't answer. He just stared into the distance, where the sky was turning a pale, dusty gold with sunset. Everything felt like it was warning of an incoming storm, not outside, but inside his own home. That night, when Lucas came home, Andrew didn't say a word. He simply sat at the dinner table, watching his son walk upstairs without a single scolding. But in his mind, a decision was taking shape. He needed proof. He needed to know. To see for himself. The next day, Andrew went to an electronics stall in Maxwell Street Market. He spoke to a young man named Daniel, the shop owner. I need a small camera. Hidden. Wireless. Can record to a memory card. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Who are you spying on? My son. Let me guess, suspect the same stuff they show on TV. Andrew said nothing. Daniel nodded, pulled out a camera no bigger than a thumb, and explained how to install and operate it. Mounted in a closet corner or inside a desk lamp. It can record audio too. Andrew paid and left quietly. That night, Lucas locked his door as usual. Once he was asleep, Andrew unlocked the door with a spare key and installed the camera on the bookshelf, aimed at the desk. He moved like a thief, but instead of stealing, he was trying to recover a trust he'd lost. The next day, he opened his laptop and reviewed the footage. He saw Lucas return home, lock the door, draw the curtains, then open a drawer. He pulled out the medicine box, the same one Andrew had seen, and a bottle of rubbing alcohol, cotton pads, and a new syringe. Lucas cleaned his upper arm and calmly injected himself. No trembling. No fear. Like someone who had done this 100 times. Afterward, he wrote something in a small notebook, then put everything away. No phone. No calls. No games. Just, a kid injecting himself, then quietly writing in a journal. Andrew collapsed back in his chair. His lips were pressed so tight, they bled. Confusion tore through him like a storm. If this was medicine, why didn't his son tell him? But if it was dangerous, why was he so calm? So, alone. All reason was now giving way to fear. And the rage that had built up all week began to ferment. Lucas still had no idea he was being watched. He kept going to school, to work, returning home quiet as ever. But Andrew couldn't bear it anymore. Under the weary yellow light, he watched his son walk past the living room in silence. In his hand was the USB drive that held the footage, either damning evidence, or a blade carving deeper into a father's heart. The USB drive lay on the table like a foreign object, glowing faintly in the dim room. Andrew had watched the footage 3 times, each viewing stirring up a new storm inside him. The image of Lucas injecting something into his upper arm, then writing quietly in his little notebook with a face so numb it seemed detached from life, it wouldn't leave Andrew's mind. No explanation. No visible sign that the boy needed help. Just a repeated action, like a ritual steeped in mystery. That evening, at exactly 9 p.m., Lucas opened his door, probably heading to the kitchen. Andrew was sitting at the dining table, his hand resting on the old medicine box, the USB drive next to it. The ceiling light cast shadows across his face, making it look dark and stone-like. Lucas froze at the sight. His eyes moved from the medicine box to the USB, then locked onto his father's gaze. "You went into my room?" Lucas asked, his voice pulled tight like a string about to snap. "Yes," Andrew replied without denial. "I saw everything. You filmed me without permission. What choice did I have? You've been hiding from me, avoiding me, injecting something into yourself. You think I don't have the right to know?" Lucas stepped forward, his face pale. "You don't understand anything. Then explain it." Andrew slammed the table. "What is this medicine? Why do you get up at 4 a.m. to work, then secretly buy it and inject it every day like an addict? Are you trying to die in front of me?" Lucas looked down, clutching the box tightly. "Don't touch it," he snapped. "You're that afraid of me knowing the truth? You don't understand. And you've never tried to understand. Because you never gave me a chance to. You live in this house like a stranger, no talking, no eye contact, no sharing. If you're not an addict, then what the hell are you doing?" Lucas was breathing hard now, taking a step back, arms wrapped tightly around the box. "You don't have the right to say that. Right? I'm your father. I have the right when I see my son injecting himself like a junkie. I'm not a junkie." "Then what is it?" Andrew shouted. "Or are you just going to stay silent again? Keep hiding and letting me imagine the worst possible things?" Lucas began to tremble, his eyes red. He looked like he was about to say something but held it back. A heavy silence settled over the room. Andrew's voice was low and final. "From now on, I don't see you as my son anymore." Silence. Lucas froze. That sentence landed like the hardest punch, not to his face, but straight into his heart. He clutched the medicine box tighter, lips quivering. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice was soft, like a raindrop in a storm. No tears. No protest. Just a single apology that held the collapse of a lonely child. He turned away and walked upstairs. Andrew didn't stop him. He just stood there, heart racing, feeling like he'd just burned the only bridge still connecting him to the remains of his family. Lucas closed the door and locked it. He sat beside his bed, medicine box still in hand. His fingers trembled as he pulled out the small notebook hidden under his pillow and flipped to the last page. He wrote something. Each word, each line, felt like a desperate grip on the last bit of sanity he still had. Andrew stepped out onto the balcony and lit a cigarette. The night wind cut cold at his neck. Across the way, Mrs. Isabel's lights were on again. Her sharp voice carried over the quiet. "I told you. You could tell by looking at that boy's face something was wrong. Pale as a ghost, skinny as hell. Definitely a junkie." Another woman's voice replied, less clear. "Poor Andrew. Lost his wife, and now his son." Andrew crushed the cigarette against the balcony railing. His chest felt like it was filled with a boulder, suffocating him. The next morning, Lucas didn't come down for breakfast. Andrew left a cup of warm milk outside his door. No knocking. No words. But the cup remained untouched until noon. When Ethan called, Andrew hesitated, then answered. "You holding up?" Ethan asked. "I don't know anymore." "What happened?" I told Lucas. "I don't see him as my son anymore." The line went quiet for a long time. Then Ethan sighed. "Andrew, why would you say that?" "I don't know what came over me. I saw him injecting himself. I lost control." "You thought you were protecting him. But what you did was push him off a cliff. Kids don't need perfect fathers, they just need their fathers there." Andrew said nothing. His chest tightened at the memory of Lucas's eyes, not angry, not hateful, just filled with silent, aching sorrow. That night, Andrew stood outside his son's door. He lifted his hand to knock, then dropped it again. Inside, he heard the soft scratch of a pen against paper, followed by the faint rustle of pages. He pressed his forehead against the door and whispered. "Lucas, if you need anything. I'm ready to listen." No reply. He stood there for a few more minutes, then walked away. On the other side of the door, Lucas sat still. He opened the small notebook, went back to the last line he had written. "I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to tell the truth. But I don't hate you. I just love you too much to say it." He set the pen down and hugged the notebook to his chest. The light in his room remained on, but inside, everything was swallowed in darkness. That night, Chicago continued to move forward. Cars sped by. People passed in a blur. But in one third-floor apartment of a crumbling old building, two separate worlds lived side by side, separated by a chasm of misunderstanding and pain. The next morning, Andrew woke with a dull numbness. His eyes were swollen. His throat dry. The house was as quiet as always, but today, the silence didn't just feel cold. It felt haunting. He looked around the kitchen table. No dishes. No footsteps. Lucas's door was still shut, the curtains drawn. It was like that room had sealed itself off from the world. In Andrew's mind, Lucas's whispered, "I'm sorry," from the night before replayed over and over. A quiet voice echoed in his thoughts. "There's something you don't know." And for the first time in weeks, Andrew didn't want to accuse anymore. He wanted to understand the truth. He took the medicine box Lucas had clung to so tightly the night before, slipped it into his shoulder bag, and caught the bus to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where an old friend of his worked as the head nurse in the internal medicine unit. Margaret, a few years older than him, was energetic, fast-talking, and sharp-eyed. When she saw Andrew in the hallway, she raised her eyebrows. "Andrew? What's going on? You look like you haven't slept in a week. I need your help." Andrew held out the box. "Can you find out what kind of medicine this is?" Margaret opened it, frowning. Inside was a small vial with a QR code and batch number, but no common label. "Looks like some kind of specialty drug. Let me ask the clinical pharmacologist." 15 minutes later, Margaret returned with a man in a white coat, salt and pepper hair. "I'm Dr. Harris. Clinical pharmacology. You're looking to identify a medication?" "Yes, my son. I suspect." "I understand." Dr. Harris opened the vial, examined it, then typed into a database on the side computer. After a few minutes, he looked up, voice calm. "This is Metazorin." "Metazorin?" "It's an injectable treatment for a rare blood clotting disorder also known as autoimmune hypocoagulability syndrome. The patient needs daily injections to maintain clotting function. Skipping more than 3 days could lead to internal bleeding, even death." Andrew went still. "It's not a drug." "No. It's a complex biological medication. Requires a special prescription. Very expensive, difficult to access. Only a few specialized hospitals carry it." Andrew felt the world crumble beneath him. "My son has been injecting this every day." Dr. Harris looked at him, his expression softening. "You should be proud. Not many teenagers can handle a condition like this on their own." Andrew staggered a step back, his knees nearly buckling. Margaret caught his arm. "Andrew? Do you want me to call someone for you?" He shook his head, eyes brimming with tears. I told him. I didn't see him as my son anymore." On the way back, Andrew sat silently on bus 27. Sunlight streamed through the windows, but it brought no warmth. His hands trembled as he took out his phone. A thought gripped him: he had to know more, right now. Back home, he rushed into Lucas's room. For the first time, not to search for evidence but to find answers. He lifted the pillow, nothing there. But when he opened the drawer beneath the desk, he found a thin file tucked neatly inside a yellow paper envelope. He opened it. Inside were clinical diagnosis papers, clearly bearing the name Lucas Carter, 15 years old. Date of exam, 1 week after Mary, Andrew's wife, had passed. Diagnosis, autoimmune hypocoagulability syndrome. Treatment, daily injection of Metazorin, 2 ml per day, subcutaneous or intramuscular. Note, requires close monitoring. Psychological support recommended if the family has experienced a recent loss. Behind that was a copy of a receipt. Metazorin, 1 vial $97. Total, 6 vials $582. Andrew sank to the floor. His vision blurred with tears. Beneath the documents was a part-time job flyer from Mary's Bakery. Handwritten in blue ink. 5 to 8 a.m., $4 per hour. Students welcome. Next to it, an envelope filled with pharmacy receipts, taped shut with care. On the envelope, scrawled handwriting read: "If Dad finds this, then I guess I can't hide it anymore." Andrew rose to his feet and walked slowly toward the bed. The room suddenly felt unfamiliar. Not because it had changed but because he had never truly seen it. He sat on the edge of the bed, buried his face in his hands. The first tear fell without warning. No sobs. No wailing. Just silent shame spreading through his body like cold fog. That boy, he's carried this alone for a whole year. Working before dawn. Injecting himself while his father slept. Earning pennies just to survive. And I was spying on him, accusing him, pushing him into a darker corner. He recalled every word he had said. "From now on, I don't see you as my son anymore." That sentence now returned like a knife, this time stabbing his own chest. Wind rustled the pages of the medical records. The late afternoon light settled gently on the floor. In that room filled with documents, a 38-year-old man worn from labor, broken by grief, and devastated by misunderstanding cried like a child. He choked out through sobs. "Lucas, you grew up, and survived, without your father." Andrew sat still on his son's bed. His head hung low, arms limp by his sides, like the life had been drained from his body. In his mind, a stream of images interwove: Lucas smiling as he proudly held up a high-graded test, Lucas holding his mother's hand one last time by her hospital bed, and Lucas, alone in the dark, injecting himself to stay alive. Now, everything was clear. No drugs. No wrongdoing. Only a child, silently fighting a rare illness, grieving his mother, and terrified of becoming a burden to a father already crushed by loss. Andrew stood up and slowly opened the desk drawer. Inside was a small wooden box, with "Lucas" written on the lid in faded blue ink. He opened it. The scent of old pine wood drifted up. Inside were a stack of medication receipts, neatly folded, sorted by week. A soft-cover journal, worn and fraying at the edges. A small fabric pouch holding a few coins and bills less than $20. A scrap of fabric, likely cut from his mother's shirt, a piece of white lace embroidered with the name Mary. Andrew picked up the journal. His hands shook. His heart pounded, as if begging him not to open it. But he did. First page. November 3rd. "The doctor said I have to inject every day." I asked, "What happens if I don't?" He looked at me and said, "Then you might die sooner." I'm not scared. But I don't want Dad to know. He flipped again. December 9th. Today I broke a vial. Had to walk 3 kilometers to another pharmacy. Didn't make it home before Dad got back, so I lied and said I stayed late at school. I hate lying. But if I tell the truth, Dad will get sad again like the day Mom died. Every page was a blade slicing through a father's heart. No blaming. No bitterness. Only quiet, careful lines filled with fear, effort, and a desperate hope to one day tell the truth. He reached a near final entry, dated 5 days ago. I feel tired today. After the shot, I felt nauseous. Maybe I'm overworking. But I can't stop. Can't skip the medicine. Can't tell Dad. I miss Mom. But I also miss Dad, the way he was before he got angry at me. And on the final page, in smaller, smeared handwriting. If I leave early, I just want Dad to know. I don't hate him. I just love him too much to say it. The journal slipped from Andrew's hands. He collapsed onto the small wooden desk where his son had spent countless nights writing those quiet, aching lines, fighting to stay alive like a bird flying against the wind. And then, the crying came. For the first time in years, Andrew cried. Not for his wife. Not for the loneliness of the house. But because he had nearly lost the most precious thing in his life because of fear, blind anger, and unforgivable doubt. Night fell. Lucas wasn't home yet. Andrew remained in his son's room, hand resting on the journal, eyes fixed on the small window now shut. He didn't know if it was too late. He didn't know if he would get another chance to make it right. Around 10 p.m., the front door opened. Lucas returned, stepping inside quietly, as always. He was about to slip upstairs when he noticed the light on in his room. Dad? No response. He entered and saw his father, the man who had always been hard, silent, unshakable, sitting on the floor, back against the bed, tears still drying on his cheeks. Lucas froze. Andrew looked up. His eyes were red and swollen, his voice rough. I'm sorry. Lucas didn't say anything. Andrew stood slowly, stepping toward him. I read your journal. I took the medicine to the hospital. I know everything now. Lucas stepped back slightly, his hand trembling. Are you mad at me? No. I'm mad at myself. Andrew dropped to his knees and bowed his head, unable to stop the tears choking his throat. I was blind. All I felt was fear, and I never tried to listen. You've been carrying this alone, and all I did was accuse, doubt, hurt you. Lucas sat down, clutching the medicine box from his backpack. His eyes glistened. I didn't want you to carry more. After Mom died. I knew you were already so tired. Andrew pulled his son into his arms for the first time in over a year. He held him tight, like letting go would mean losing him forever. From now on, you don't have to do this alone. Whatever your illness, whatever life throws at us. I'm still your father. Lucas buried himself in his father's chest, sobbing. They both cried together in a room that had seen so much pain, and now, finally, held the quiet return of love. No words. No hurry. Just the gentle rhythm of two hearts trying to find their way back to each other. That night, Andrew didn't sleep. He sat in Lucas's room until morning, watching his son finally rest peacefully for the first time in weeks. On the desk, the journal lay open, its pages fluttering gently in the night breeze. And Andrew, with messy hair and bloodshot eyes, knew that tomorrow, he would begin again. Late, yes. But not too late. The morning light crept through the window of Lucas's room, the first real brightness after a long darkness. A soft breeze stirred the pages still left unwritten in the little journal. Lucas slept on, breathing evenly, his face for the first time in many months free from tension. Andrew sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes never leaving his son. He had stayed up all night, not out of guilt this time, but out of hope. When Lucas stirred and opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was his father's face, watching him not with suspicion, not with anger, but with pure remorse and love. Dad, Lucas whispered, his voice still hoarse. Andrew didn't answer. He simply leaned down and held his son tight enough to make sure he wouldn't disappear if he blinked. I'm sorry, Lucas. I'm sorry, from the bottom of my heart. Lucas stayed quiet for a long moment before replying softly. I thought, you'd never look at me like that again. I used to think you were a burden, something distant. But that's not true. You're the only thing that kept me alive after your mom passed." Lucas choked up, then began to cry. Andrew held him tighter. "From today on, I won't let you fight alone anymore. No matter what happens, you and we're a team." That afternoon, Andrew took Lucas to Rush University Medical Center, where they met with the hospital's hematology specialists. In the exam room, after reviewing Lucas's medical records and the previous lab results he had collected on his own, Dr. Jameson, a kind-eyed older man, took Lucas's hand and said, "You've done an incredible job. But this isn't a battle you need to fight by yourself." Andrew sat beside his son, eyes heavy with regret. "I thought my child was hurting himself, but it turns out I'm the one who needs to fix what I broke." Dr. Jameson nodded gently. "You both still have time. And we'll be here to walk that road with you." A few days later, a young doctor from the hospital's international department, Dr. Clara, met privately with Andrew and Lucas. Lucas's story was submitted to the non-profit health organization Heart of Hope. They have a sponsorship program for children under 18 with rare blood disorders. "Really?" Andrew stood up. "They just sent confirmation today. Starting next week, Lucas will receive Metazorin completely free, for life." Lucas looked at his father in disbelief. Andrew, stunned, reached for his son's hand. "See? We're not too late. It's never too late." The next day, Andrew submitted a request to drop his night shift. The pay was lower, but he didn't care. The savings Mary had left behind and his mother's early retirement funds were enough to cover expenses for now. Instead, he reached out to Raymond, an old friend who used to run a repair shop nearby. The small garage on Market Street had recently changed hands. "I don't need much, Raymond. Just a little corner. Enough to work. Enough to stay close to my son." Raymond looked at him, patted his shoulder. "Take it all. I'm getting old, I don't need it anymore. When a man wants to fix something with his own hands, let him." And just 1 week later, Andrew officially reopened the garage under a new name. Clean Hands Auto. The shop was near home, only 2 blocks from Lucas's school. Every morning, Andrew made breakfast himself, standing outside Lucas's room with a small smile. "What do you want to eat today?" "I learned how to make soft-boiled eggs." Lucas looked at him and smiled for the first time in many months. "Where'd you learn that?" "Online. But I boiled the eggs with my whole heart." In the afternoons, after online classes, Lucas sat at the wooden table in the repair shop, sketching a new sign for his dad's garage. "Dad, I think we should add a small line underneath." "What would it say?" Lucas thought for a moment, then slowly wrote with a calligraphy pen. "This place doesn't fix cars, it mends what's broken." Andrew stared at his son, speechless. His eyes stung with tears. A month passed. Lucas grew stronger. He still had to inject medication daily, but he no longer hid. Andrew helped him prepare disinfecting, checking the time. Every time, Andrew held his hand and told a silly story to distract him. "Back in the day, I used to faint just from looking at a syringe in the hospital." Lucas laughed. "And now you're teaching me how to wipe alcohol at a perfect 90-degree angle. Goes to show people can change, if they know they were wrong." On evenings, Andrew and Lucas ate dinner together. No more distance. No more angry silence. They shared meals, old memories, and the beginnings of new trust. Lucas started drawing again too. For the feast of St. Juan, Andrew gifted him a professional watercolor set. For Dad's favorite artist. Lucas looked up, astonished. "You knew I still wanted to draw?" "I knew when you used up all the scrap paper drawing portraits of Mom. I just forgot how to see it." One afternoon, Lucas walked into the repair shop with a small framed painting in hand. He held it up, a little shy. "Dad! I painted this." I'd like to hang it at the front counter. Andrew wiped his hands and stepped out. The painting showed two figures, a man holding a young boy who was injecting himself, and behind them two wings of soft light, wide and protective. Below the painting were just two words. Thank you. And beneath that, thank you for not letting go. Andrew couldn't speak. He just pulled his son into his arms and held him for a long time. News of the incredible journey of Andrew and Lucas began to spread through the little village neighborhood within a few weeks. It all started with a touching feature in the Sunday edition of the Chicago Tribune, under the Life and Humanity section. Headline: From Doubt to Love, a father learns to love before it's too late. The article was written by a young journalist named Martha Reed, who had dropped by Clean Hands Auto to get a tire changed and happened to hear Andrew mention his son's journal. Martha asked for permission to write the story. When it was published, the entire neighborhood buzzed. For the first time in a long time, people stopped, took a breath, and asked themselves, have I truly listened to the people I love? That morning, while Andrew was wiping the glass door of the shop, Mrs. Catherine, the lottery ticket vendor who always sat at the corner, stopped by. Andrew, I read the article. I cried all morning. You're a wonderful father. Andrew wiped the sweat from his forehead, flustered. I'm not a great father. I'm just a father who almost lost his son, lucky enough to still have time. After the article was published, Lucas received hundreds of encouraging messages from old classmates, former teachers, even strangers. One afternoon, a group of high school students showed up in front of the shop, carrying a large canvas signed by everyone. For Lucas, our inspiration. We're proud to have studied with you. Lucas held the canvas, hands trembling. Dad. I never thought I deserved to be remembered by anyone. You've lived more honorably than people 10 times your age, Lucas. It wasn't just love that came to them. The truth also came into the light, and those who once hurt them with cruel words now had to face the consequences. One day, Mrs. Isabel, the neighbor who once spread rumors that Lucas was an addict, showed up at the shop's door. She held a bag of pastries in her hand. I want to apologize. Andrew looked at her calmly. You don't need to bring pastries. Just don't speak about others unless you understand them. I was wrong. Lucas stepped out. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. No anger. No rejection. His quiet forgiveness made Mrs. Isabel's eyes well up with tears. Even Lucas's former teacher, who once bluntly said, "He's going nowhere if he stays tied to a syringe," faced backlash after her comment resurfaced in the article's comment section. Thomas, the neighborhood supervisor, was forced to stand before the residential committee and issue a public apology. His voice was small, eyes lowered. I misjudged a child. And I misjudged a father. Lucas didn't attend the hearing. But when he later watched the recording, he simply said, "That's enough. I don't need him to kneel. I just want people to understand, not every syringe means something shameful." Inspired by their story, the community helped establish a small nonprofit called Hands Together, a fund that supports students with rare illnesses by giving them access to medication and psychological care. Lucas was chosen as the face of the campaign. He painted a large piece, a bare tree shedding its leaves next to a fresh green sapling, symbolizing the bond between parents and children, still connected even when they once seemed so far apart. Andrew also began accepting invitations to speak at local high schools. At his first talk, he stood nervously on stage, voice raspy. I once failed to listen to my son. And I nearly lost him. We don't need perfect children. We just need to learn how to listen, before it's too late. At his second talk, a student stood up and asked, Are you still afraid of losing your son? Andrew smiled. No. Ever since my son hugged me and forgave me. I know we've truly found each other. The entire auditorium stood in applause. Life between father and son settled into a quiet, steady rhythm. Lucas still injected medication every morning but no longer in hiding or shame. After each injection, he would paint a small drawing to reflect how he felt that day. One morning, he said to his father, "Each injection is a brushstroke in the painting of my life." Andrew tousled his hair. "And I'll be the one holding your palette, won't let a single drop go to waste." At the end of the year, Lucas received an online art scholarship from an academy in the United Kingdom. He submitted a portfolio of paintings that expressed his emotional journey through illness and survival. Along with it, he wrote a letter in both American English and British English, closing with, "If you've ever thought you were just a burden, please look again at those who choose to stay beside you. They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to exist long enough for them to learn how to love you." Lucas Carter. On Lucas's desk sat a new drawing. A father and son riding bicycles through the little village neighborhood. In the sky was a cloud shaped like a woman's smiling face, Mary. Beneath it, handwritten, "We are still here, and doing well, because of you, Mom." Andrew no longer feared losing his son. Because he knew from the moment they held each other under the dim hallway light that they had truly found each other again. Not just by blood, but by choice. The choice to forgive. The choice to stay. The choice to love, even late. The story is a profound reminder of listening, empathy, and compassion in family. Let silence and suspicion never be the end of something that can still be healed. Children don't need perfect parents, they just need those willing to stand beside them. And sometimes, what looks like wrongdoing is actually a quiet effort to survive. Choose trust. Choose to ask, not judge. Because some apologies, when delayed, may never reach the ears they were meant for, and some love, when left unspoken, may be lost forever.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.